We're back with you on Morning Barbados, 29 minutes after 7 now, and as promised, we are getting into our budget review. Of course, the official budgetary proposals would have been shared through Minister of Finance Christopher Sinckler on Tuesday afternoon, and the opposition leader, Mia Motley, would have had her chance to reply yesterday. Now, this morning, we will have a number of persons sharing with us. We want to start with Krystle Howell. She is the auditor. Good morning to you, Ms. Howell.
Good morning.
Great to have you here. We also have on the phone lines Lisa Gale of Lisa Gale Consulting. Good morning, Lisa.
Hi, good morning, Cassandra.
Thank you so much for being willing to join us even from wherever you are as you move about your busy morning. Yes, thank you so much. And Peter Thorne, our CBC Newsroom journalist, will join the conversation a little later. But the first thing I think we all agree on is that Barbadians want to understand a little more about this 8% hike in the social responsibility tax and then all the other taxes as it relates to foreign spend. So we give you the first opportunity to say a little something about that, Ms. Howell.
Well, the first thing we have to address is whether the tax was even passed in Parliament, because the last time that we would have heard anything about this, it wasn't even passed. So on top of the fact that you have that issue going on, you've also increased it to 10%, which is an unusual jump by any stretch of the imagination. And the impact that that is going to have on the economy is just unbelievable that something like this would have been passed without taking those things into consideration, the factors on the increase in the cost of living for the average Barbadian, for businesses, how this is going to be passed on, and the trickle-down effect. And we also recognize that usually when these increases happen, it's not going to be just 2%. It always has an increasing effect and impact. So when you push it to 10%, what kind of effect is that going to have on the economy?
Right. Lisa, we know you're on the line. We want to get your take on the hike in the tax as well. A lot of people are adding it to the value-added tax and saying 17.5 and 10%, that is 27.5% in taxes. What's your take on it?
I think for sure there's going to be inflation in Barbados. As Krystle said, there's going to be an increase in cost of living, increase in doing business, increase for young entrepreneurs, for businesses. I think it's going to impact all end users, and that is going to have a significant drag, particularly on the revenue attempt at the government to rake in at least about 536 million was the number that I recall seeing. Because persons are going to have less disposable income, that's going to lead to a significant drag, and persons are not going to be able to purchase the same types and amounts of things that they could be able to purchase in the past. And that means then that the expected take is going to be smaller, leading to a shrinkage of the economy. So Barbadians are going to have some significant hardship over the next few months.
I want to take a step back, though, before we get into the other 2% tax on the foreign exchange transactions. We want to get your overall view of the budget in its totality, because while we are hearing about these taxes, yes, what is your view as far as the presentation of the budget in its entirety is concerned?
Yes. For me, you're still at me? Sure.
Yeah, still at you, yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. I thought that it was a difficult pitch for the Minister of Finance to bowl on in the very first instance. Given the economic fundamentals as such, spiraling, we had a fiscal deficit that is so large. We have debt to GDP ratio beyond 100%, close to 150%. We have our foreign exchange cover falling below the 12-week figure. So we were in some hard times already. So it was difficult for him, in any case, to bring any measures to the fore.
Right.
My take is that the measures came too late. When I looked at 2013, this is when we should have inflicted what I call this magnitude of austerity that we have inflicted today. And because of that, because of the lateness of it, I think we are not necessarily going to see the expected results that we wanted to see, one. And then two, my take as well is that we kind of don't have, the Minister of Finance did not clearly share what his strategy was. So without a clear strategy, it can't be just a balanced budget. And I think while he has articulated that in the lead up to the measures, it was a missed opportunity for him to inject some focus on the things like entrepreneurship, technology, culture. Those growth sectors that Barbados can definitely benefit from, in particular to renewable energy as well. And because of that, I thought it was a missed opportunity for me, as well as some inconsistency. It say you can't tax your way out of a recession. You can't tax your way, but yet we have seen an increase from 2% to 10%. So it's too much hardship.
You mentioned
that's my take.
You mentioned specifically 2013, Lisa. Are you saying that perhaps then you may have been able to ease more gradually into it, so that this?
I thought so. It was politically expedient for the government to put the hard measures after having gotten back in at that time. And shortly after, I don't know if you remember, Cassandra, Barbados lost close to $300 million in foreign exchange cover shortly after the 2013 election. There was no real explanation as to what occurred then, but that was when you could have put some brakes on the foreign exchange transactions. And I thought I was a missed opportunity then. That budget was a disappointing budget for me because it didn't have the measures that I thought the pitch was so perfect because you have a government, you have 5 potential years. You could have done much more then. At this time now, if you notice, every single year we have tinkered with austerity, but we have not got the results that we thought that we could have got as a country. And as a result, I think that the policy overall, if I look at the last 6, I'm not going to go 9 years because this is not necessarily looking at the administration itself, over the last 6 years, in particular from 2011, I think that we did not do what we could have done. And on this pitch now, things are far more difficult in 2017 than they were in 2011 or 2013, I may add. And then now, because we are on the brink of an election, it really isn't politically expedient, economically expedient. I don't think that this
timing,
these measures are going to yield the results that are expected.
Okay.
Well, we have Peter Thorne joining us now, our journalist from our newsroom. Peter, you just heard Lisa. Good morning first. Let me welcome you to the panel. You just heard Ms. Gale speaking about basically the bad timing of introducing a budget of this measure. We want to get
these austerities,
Yes, we want to get your thoughts here because she said 2013 would probably have been a better time to do it, but 2013, if I'm not wrong, is the year that a number of workers, hundreds of workers, were sent home as well.
Yes, which is why I said 2013, because he had a lot of things going on, so you could have put all the policies in place at that time, even if you would have delayed the particular increase. But that year was the year that budget could have been brought, and then we would have had, they could have said, Barbados, we need to do this, we need to buckle down, we need to do these 5 things so that we can get this place at 2017. But no, that was not done.
All right, Peter?
Traditionally, Caribbean governments, if they have to go in terms of austerity to, say, the IMF or to implement an austerity program and they face the electorate, they will go in the first year. It was done in 1991 with Sir Lloyd Sandiford when the situation was different in terms of foreign exchange. We were down to just a week and about 3 days of foreign exchange in 1991. That was a very difficult period. The country was on the verge of running out of foreign exchange. We still have in the central bank up to the end of December, we had over $681 million. And most recently, we have heard that it has crept back over $700 million.
Right. So
we are not at that stage. We have about just over 10 weeks of cover, but the situation is really dire because we have about $364 million in terms of interest, in terms of monies we have to pay on loans. It's just interest expense this year and another $300 million next year. I'm not talking about the principal at all. And if you look at Christmas orders that have to come in from September, usually they will use up between $300 to $450 million in foreign exchange. So between now and September, some kind of inflows have to come. The government has already said it's not going to the capital markets for this. So basically, it's relying on inflows from the sale of the Barbados National Terminal Oil Company, the Sam Lawrence deal, Now we've heard the
Hilton,
Hilton to the
Barbados.
tune of 100 million US. Well, it's 200 million, but after you take off the liabilities of the Hilton, you get about $100 million. It's also relying on an inflow from the Latin American Development Bank called CAF to the tune of another $100 million. Remember, we had recently had to borrow 25 million US dollars from the First Citizens Bank to join what would be called the Government's Credit Union or the Latin American Development Bank. So the truth is, I don't envy Minister Sinckler. This is a really tough deal. At some time, we had to bite the bullet, and the chickens had to come home to roost. This has happened. The alternative would have been worse. He said, sending home thousands of civil servants. I'm sure that would not have been on the card, and it's a tough take. So we go for the lesser of the evils at the moment. For Barbadians, the situation is this. It's a deficit. A deficit is financed in three ways. The governments will either borrow locally, regionally, or on the international capital markets. There will be either taxation, direct or indirect taxation, or what you call official financing, or it's NIS or the central bank taking up the securities for the government, which is almost akin to what's called the printing of money. So those are the three options. The government has already said, you saw the fiasco with the governor of the central bank, Dr. Worrell, where it came to a head and he was relieved of his duties. So they have ruled out more printing of money, because between the NIS and the central bank hold almost $4 billion in government securities, treasury notes, bills, long-term bonds, you name it. In terms of borrowing, it says not going back to the capital markets at this time, either locally, regionally, or internationally. Taxation, we already have been overtaxed, but they had to come up with some ingenious way to get about $458 million. In this take, they have moved the National Social Responsibility Levy from 2 to 10%, introduced in September 2016, at the time to 2%. A loaf of bread used to cost about $3, and when that was introduced in September 2016, a loaf of bread went to about $4.50, $4.65. Now the take is about 5 times as much, because it's gone from 2 to 10%. And then you're applying VAT, which is at 17.5%. And then if the manufacturer or the merchant want to buy things for inputs from overseas, you have to, at the point of buying foreign sales transaction, you have another 2% take. Oil and gas, they have also gone up. So if you add on the 8%, 17.5, that's 25. The 2% for the foreign sales transaction, that's 27. If he goes to borrow $100,000, he has to get it from the bank. The bank will also charge a spread between 10 to 13%. That's another 13%, that's about 40%.
Okay.
It's going to come
Peter
over
Thorne,
to the consumer.
listen,
You understand what I'm saying?
you are making
if a
my
tin of
head
corned
spin.
beef was now at $5 in at this particular time, by
something.
July it's going to be about 7 something.
Salaries aren't going up.
Exactly. This is what I wanted you to come in on, and I want you to start the response off, Ms. Howell, because with all these taxes and people layering the taxes, the ones that already exist and the ones that are expected as of July 1st, some people have said, well, you have not cut salaries, and nobody's saying the Barbados dollar has been devalued, but does this equate for you as an auditor as a devaluation? How do you see this really impacting? Because, I mean, if it made my head spin just hearing him say that, I imagine the average Barbadian is thinking so unconcerned.
The average Barbadian does have a right to be concerned, because it may not be an outright devaluation, but when you have that 2% charge on the US dollar, you have to go and look for more Barbadian dollars to get US dollars to purchase the things that you would need or that you would want. Then in some cases, some persons do consider this to be a devaluation. The concern that I have is the statement that there are no other alternatives. And you would have had us on last month when we were talking about the internal auditors. You have an Auditor General's report, and the 2016 report was released recently, and it highlighted the fact that there's $1.3 billion in outstanding receivables from various entities across Barbados. And there are 6 entities in particular that were highlighted that represent $303 million. So if the government is putting forward a budget which estimates to bring in a revenue stream of $567 million, and you already have 6 entities, the Needham's Point is included in one of those 6, that can bring in $303 million alone, then already you can see that this is a possible solution, and that only represents 24% of these outstanding receivables. So you have a number of entities in Barbados that are not fulfilling their responsibility to this country to pay any outstanding debts that they have. And in turn, then the rest of the population is asked to pick up the
Bear that
slack
burden.
and look at the effect. It is a matter of he's in a very difficult position. I do not envy him at all, but we have to look at all of the alternatives that we have and see which one is going to have the most damaging effect and be able to take the advice of persons like the chairman of the Barbados Chamber of Commerce, the Private Sector Association, the Auditor General. Take these suggestions and make an analysis as to which one is going to have the least impact on the people of Barbados, because it is a very scary time to be in if this particular measure is implemented.
There's only one other take I would want to put to it, is that for the time I've known myself since independence, there's been the debate raging as to whether the private sector should be the engine of growth or development in Barbados. The harsh reality, this came to a fore, remember, in the 1980s when you had serious debates between Tom Adams, Errol Barrow, and Dr. Richie Haynes in the Parliament about whether the private sector should lead. The reality is the political class really wants the private sector to lead. The truth is they've never taken the lead. If Barbadians had to wait for the private sector to lead, it will never happen. They wait for government to roll the playing field and roll the wicket, and then they come in. They don't take the bull by the horns. You saw it with the, I'm sorry if I'm being harsh, but this is the reality in terms of the economic partnership relationship with the European Union. They stand back and wait, and they are into a buy and sell mode. You know, they have to, I'm not saying that you don't have creative private sector people or business people, but the reality is that in a post-independent Barbados, they have never led and been the engine of development for the economy
I
in
would
Barbados.
like Ms. Lisa Gale to say something
Yeah.
here.
Lisa, what's
Are
your
you still
take on
there?
what Peter would have just said, that the private sector
Could have done more or could
never
lead more?
never taking the bull by the horns and trying to lead?
I wouldn't say, but what I would say is that there's always room for improvement. There's always room for improvement. The government is create the enabling environment, facilitating environment, and road takes at the private sector and do the good trade. I think it's any wrong for to say that.
Okay, Lisa, you
Yeah,
somehow are breaking up, so you have moved to a different position. Hopefully we can reconnect with you so that we can get your comments a little more clearly on that point. But Peter was making an emphatic point about maybe thinking the private sector
Needs to
could
do more.
lead more.
But looking now at the other side of the coin, the budget reply, we've heard Mia Motley's take on the situation. She's blasted government for not, the Prime Minister for not taking more of a leadership role in this situation, and she's blasted the government as a whole, the Finance Minister, for taxing the country too hard. What about the proposals?
I think that the focus that she would have had, especially with regards to the wastage, is a valid point that was made. We heard the comment even in the minister's initial statement where there is no wastage in Barbados, and that simply is not true. Again, in the Auditor General's report, there are numerous reports and instances of wastage that would have occurred. It is the equivalent of me taking, say, a box of wingdings, and you know that there's supposed to be 12 wingdings in this box, and I give you a box and you only see 2. And I'm trying to tell you, don't focus on the 10 that are missing. Focus on the 2 that you have and be satisfied with that. That's not the way how it works. If the taxpayers have entrusted the government with their money and their reports of wastage that you can see with your own eyes, you don't even need to read a report, you just need to go down to Four Seasons and you see the wastage that is occurring. You have a report that highlights millions of dollars that cannot be accounted for, and no one is giving anyone any kind of indication as to what it is that's going on with this money, where it has gone, why it isn't being accounted for, and how are we going to make up for the fact that you've given out this money and there's nothing to show for it. So I think highlighting the wastage was an important point. There were areas where I wish there was more emphasis on the alternatives, but I understand
The
that.
solutions.
I understand the way how the political system works, so that could not have been done. But at this point, we do need solutions. We need viable options. We need things that will help the people of Barbados not to feel as though this is a time of despair, but something that we can grow and thrive out of.
All right, closing comments, Peter Thorne?
The truth is that once the dollar has not officially been devalued, I think that there's a way out. I think that once we can get growth, not led by taxation, but growth within the next 3 years, and then put on a path of sustainability. The next 2 years will be very difficult in Barbados. But from about 2020, if the economy keeps growing, because last year you saw a flicker of hope after since 2008, after the first 8 years of this administration, got growth to the tune of 1.6%, and there's projected growth of between 1.5 and 2% this year. So at least it's beginning to emerge from the doldrums. If we can, this will be a period, perhaps, I'm sure, almost certain that the economy will contract because of these measures.
Yeah.
Yes.
But then we will rebound. And if we can rebound, as long as there's no devaluation, by 2020 or 2021, I'm sure the Barbados economy can be resilient and rebound again.
Hold on. Thank
There
you.
you have it.
Thank you very much. Krystle Howell, auditor. Lisa Gale had joined us on the phone line. Just last session, we didn't have quite a good connection, but we thank you, Ms. Gale, for sharing with us. Lisa Gale of Lisa Gale Consulting, and Peter Thorne, our CBC Newsroom journalist, coming in to share on a post-budget and budgetary reply conversation. Thank you so much. You know we'll be calling on you some more.
Yes, as we try to break down everything that is the budget. But we have